Greetings and salutations. Thank you for lending an ear to the voice of the times this Monday, November 22, 2021. For today's editorial, diplomacy should retain lead in territorial dispute. The recent clash between the Philippines and China in the West Philippine Sea, or WPS, should not dislodge diplomacy from leading efforts to resolve the disputed territories issue. The priority for now should be de-escalation, as that serves everyone's interests. The Philippines should avoid missteps, even minor ones, because they could easily spin out of control. Understandably, the public remains upset days after the Chinese Coast Guard fired a water cannon at Philippine boats resupplying military personnel at Ayungin Shoal. That is also known as Second Thomas Shoal in the Spratly Islands, which China refers to as Nesia Kentao. Ayungin Shoal is well within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, but China claims virtually all of the WPS, the local name for the South China Sea. China justified its attack, saying the Philippines trespassed in Nesia Kentao. Manila summoned the Chinese ambassador, filed a diplomatic protest, and raised the possibility of invoking the Mutual Defense Treaty, or MDT, with the United States. Washington then responded, issuing a statement reiterating America's commitment on the application of the MDT on an armed attack on the Philippine military, public vessels, or aircraft in the South China Sea. Before any party makes another move, everyone should first take a deep breath. Each party should check what group assumes leadership in their respective countries, because the stakes cannot be ignored or underestimated. If hawks in the Philippines would have their way, our ships would be retaliating with our own water cannon and matching whatever China fires at the Filipinos. It would not be far-fetched to think that hawks may even wish for the US Navy to start escorting Philippine vessels. That puts the Philippines on a slippery slope. What comes next? Reopening US bases in the Philippines? The public should recognize that the US, like any other country, will behave according to its own interests. In China, the People's Liberation Army, or PLA, is unlikely to remain restrained, even against mere water cannons, and with increased US military presence. If the PLA takes over policy-making in China, it will naturally favor military-style solutions. Is that what the world wants? It may not even be what China wants. Many believe, even in the US with people like economist Jeffrey Sachs, that China simply wants its place in the community of nations, not world domination. They argue that China's rise should not threaten anyone, but instead be welcomed by an increasingly interconnected world that hopes for development and collaboration in resolving common problems. Driver's seat. Filing protests, negotiating, and practicing diplomacy may seem passive, but they are alternatives in asserting our rights and claims. We should not give up on diplomacy, even when China tests our patience. We have more to gain from peace and stability than from conflict, and our relations with China should not be defined by our disputes in the WPS. We also hope that the diplomats and doves in China will retake the wheel in policymaking and policy implementation. After all, diplomatic protests from Beijing, no matter how sharp, can only bruise egos. Of course, the Philippines is small, which is why it turns to the US whenever threatened. Ironically, China may be driving the Philippines even closer to the US, at a time when the incumbent government in Manila has mended relations with Beijing. The Duterte government made progress in forging an independent foreign policy, as mandated by the 1987 Constitution. But independence means being neither pro-America nor pro-China. Clearly, the Philippines is at a disadvantage when dealing directly with a superpower like China. The Philippines could turn to the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, instead. Its member states are more familiar with China, and may seem less threatening to Beijing than the US. Turning to ASEAN may not deliver immediate results, although it elevates economic diplomacy to a more prominent role. Confronted this way, China is likely to tap its own diplomats to spar with the United ASEAN. That seems better than having the PLA in the driver's seat, controlling China's next moves. At least diplomats simply trade barbs and use fiery rhetoric even as they seek compromise and fortify relations on other fronts. And that's the editorial for Monday, November 22, 2021. For more news and information, Get a copy of the Manila Times on print, subscribe to our digital edition, or log on to www.manilatimes.net. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and listen to The Voice of the Times.